there is such a thing as evil, and some people are evil.
He was the scariest criminal I ever came across. You could see it in his eyes. He just had that stare in his eyes.
This is new surveillance video that shows the moment a gunman opened fire on a home, wounding 5 people.
From a cunning mastermind like El Chapo to the famous Pablo Escobar, whose Medellin cartel once dominated the cocaine trade, these are some of the most notorious cartel members whose fates were sealed in prison, and their once untouchable empires reduced to nothing but shadows of their past. El Chapo, Joaquin El Chapo. Guzman was one of the most feared and powerful drug lords in modern history. As the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, Guzman controlled a vast criminal empire that spanned continents. Born on April 4, 1957, in a poor rural area of Mexico, Guzman rose from humble beginnings to become the head of an organization responsible for smuggling tons of cocaine, marijuana, heroin, and methamphetamine into the United States. His cartel earned billions of dollars annually, making it one of the wealthiest criminal organizations in the world. Guzman became infamous not only for his drug empire, but also for his ability to evade capture. He escaped from prison twice in Mexico, once in 2001 by hiding in a laundry cart, and again in 2015 through a mile-long underground tunnel connected to his cell. In 2016, Guzman was recaptured and extradited to the United States, where he faced trial in 2019. He was found guilty on multiple charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and murder, and was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 30 years. Today, Guzman is serving his sentence in ADX Florence in Colorado, a supermax prison known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This facility is designed to house the most dangerous criminals, and Guzman is under 24-hour surveillance in near-total isolation. His imprisonment marks the downfall of one of the most notorious drug lords in history, Gilberto Rodriguez Orejuela. Gilberto Rodriguez Orejuela was one of the most influential figures in the Colombian drug trade during its peak in the 1980s and 1990s. He co-founded the Cali Cartel. The Cali Cartel was known for its more calculated and less violent approach compared to its counterpart. Instead of relying solely on terror, Rodriguez Orejuela used bribery, corruption, and political influence to expand the cartel's operations. At its height, the Cali Cartel controlled up to 80% of the global cocaine market, earning billions of dollars. In 1995, Rodriguez Orejuela was arrested in Colombia, but the cartel continued operating under his leadership from prison. His reign finally ended when he was extradited to the United States in 2004. He faced charges of drug trafficking, conspiracy, and money laundering. In 2006, Rodriguez Orejuela was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. While incarcerated, his health deteriorated due to age and illness. He spent his final years at the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina, where he passed away on May 31, 2022, at the age of 83. His death marked the end of one of the most significant chapters in the history of the Colombian drug trade. Carlos Landín Martínez. Carlos Landín Martínez, also known as El Puma, was a high-ranking member of the Gulf Cartel, one of Mexico's most powerful drug trafficking organizations. The Gulf Cartel was responsible for smuggling vast quantities of cocaine, marijuana, and other drugs into the United States. Martinez played a key role in coordinating drug shipments, securing smuggling routes, and managing violent enforcers who protected the cartel's operations. His influence within the organization made him a target for both Mexican and U.S. law enforcement agencies. In 2006, Landín Martínez was arrested in Mexico and extradited to the United States, where he faced charges of drug trafficking and conspiracy. He was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment in a federal prison. While in custody, he continued to command respect within the cartel, but his power waned as newer leaders emerged. On December 9, 2021, Landín Martínez died while serving his life sentence in the United States. His death marked the end of an era for the Gulf Cartel, though the organization continues to operate under different leadership. Rafael Edmond. Rafael Edmond was a dominant figure in Washington, D.C.'s drug trade during the 1980s. Born in 1964, Edmond grew up in the nation's capital and became involved in the drug trade at a young age. By his early 20s, He had established a massive cocaine distribution network that brought crack cocaine to the streets of D.C. At the height of his operation, Edmund was reportedly earning up to $70 million a month. He employed hundreds of people to distribute drugs and protect his business, making him one of the most powerful drug dealers in the United States. His activities contributed significantly to the crack epidemic that devastated communities across the country during the 1980s. In 1989, Edmund was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for drug trafficking and conspiracy. While in prison, he continued to run his operation until he was caught and transferred to a more secure facility. In an unexpected twist, Edmund later cooperated with federal authorities, providing information that led to the arrest of other major drug traffickers. This cooperation earned him some protection, but did not reduce his sentence. Edmund remained in federal custody until his death in 2023 at the age of 60. His life is a cautionary tale of the far-reaching consequences of the drug trade. While he gained wealth and power, his actions also contributed to widespread addiction, violence, and social decay in his community. Edmund's story is often used to illustrate the human cost of the drug epidemic and the difficulty of breaking the cycle of crime and poverty. Despite his death, the impact of his activities during the 1980s is still felt in many parts of Washington, D.C. Osiel Cardenas Guillen. Osiel Cardenas Guillen is one of the most well-known drug lords in Mexico's history. He rose to power as the leader of the Gulf Cartel, which became one of the most dangerous and influential criminal organizations in Mexico. Born in 1967 in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, Cardenas started as a police officer but later joined the Gulf Cartel, eventually taking control of the group in the late 1990s. Under his leadership, the cartel expanded its drug trafficking operations and became notorious for its violence. Cardenas is also credited with founding Los Zetas, a paramilitary group initially created as the enforcement arm of the Gulf Cartel. This group brought a new level of brutality to Mexico's drug wars. In 2003, Cardenas was arrested by the Mexican military after a dramatic standoff in Matamoros. His capture was seen as a significant victory for law enforcement, but his influence continued even from prison. In 2007, he was extradited to the United States, where he faced charges including drug trafficking, money laundering, and murder. In 2010, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. During his time in U.S. custody, Cardenas reportedly cooperated with authorities, providing information about the Gulf Cartel and its rivals. In 2023, after completing his sentence, Cardenas was deported back to Mexico. But he now faces multiple charges in Mexico, including organized crime and drug trafficking. Juan Garcia Abrego. Juan Garcia Abrego was the leader of the Gulf Cartel during the 1980s and 1990s, a period when it became one of the most dominant drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. Garcia Abrego took control of the cartel after the arrest of his uncle. Under his leadership, the Gulf Cartel shifted its focus from smuggling marijuana to trafficking large quantities of cocaine from Colombia into the United States. By the early 1990s, Garcia Abrego was responsible for smuggling an estimated 1/3 of all cocaine entering the U.S. Garcia Abrego was not just a drug trafficker, but also a master of corruption. He allegedly bribed politicians, police, and military officials in both Mexico and the United States to protect his operations. His ability to evade capture for years made him one of the most wanted criminals in the world. However, his luck ran out in 1996 when he was arrested by Mexican authorities and extradited to the United States. In 1997, he was convicted on multiple charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. He was sentenced to multiple life terms and is currently serving his sentence in a U.S. federal prison. Garcia Abrego's arrest marked a turning point in the history of the Gulf Cartel. Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar is perhaps the most infamous drug lord in history. Escobar rose to prominence as the leader of the Medellin cartel during the 1980s. At the height of his power, he controlled 80% of the global cocaine trade, earning an estimated $420 million per week. Escobar's cartel smuggled thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States and other countries, making him one of the richest men in the world. His fortune was so immense that he reportedly spent $2,500 per month on rubber bands just to hold his cash together. Despite his wealth, Escobar's reign was marked by extreme violence. He ordered the assassination of politicians, judges, journalists, and law officers who opposed him. His cartel was responsible for bombings and massacres that claimed thousands of lives. In 1991, Escobar surrendered to Colombian authorities under an agreement that allowed him to be confined in a luxury prison he designed, known as La Catedral. But in 1992, when the Colombian government tried to transfer him to a standard prison, Escobar escaped. This sparked one of the largest manhunts in history. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was tracked down and killed by Colombian National Police in Medellin. His death marked the end of the Medellin cartel's dominance. Now before you leave, just don't forget to give this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and also ring that notification bell while you're down there.